Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 11th round of the 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series season, the Australian Grand Prix at the Mount Panorama Racing Circuit in Bathurst. Points leader Trenton Krentz holds a 6-point gap over Pac-Man coming to the event, but with Pac-Man looking to carry his momentum from last week's win, tonight will certainly be a thrilling event. This magnificent 3.8-mile circuit features a total of 23 turns and an incredible 570-foot difference between its highest and lowest points as it winds its way up and down Mount Panorama. The first sector is characterized by the 90-degree first corner, Hell Corner, followed by the long up and downhill mountain straight. Then up through Griffin's Bend, the circuit starts to wind up the mountain. Heading past this set of uphill tight left-handers and then Quarry Corner, the circuit starts heading back downhill. The track drops after a short straight and goes through the Dipper, with turns 11 all the way through turns 18 being a constant downhill snaking S. After heading through the left-handed Forest Elbows hairpin, the drivers power down the Conrad straight towards the right-left-right chase chicane. With one final left-hander, Murray's Corner, the drivers will finally complete this exhausting 2-minute lap. Drivers are almost guaranteed to hit the wall tonight. The question is just how many times and how severe. Could tonight be a wildcard race where the championship gets thrown upside down? Our questions will be answered in just a few minutes when the green flag drops. On pole for tonight's 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series Australian Grand Prix is Trenton Krentz. More than a handful of poles this season, which has added up significantly in the championship standings with the one bonus point he is awarded. With that, the gap is now 7 points between himself and Pac-Man for the championship standings lead coming into tonight. Trenton has gone the last 2 weeks without a victory. He started the season not winning through the first 3 weeks. We'll see if his streak continues, or if he will return to his winning ways here at Mount Panorama. Jesse Carlson, a very strong qualifying in second place in the Chevy Corvette. We saw him win from pole at Northern Isle, obviously an incredibly different style of circuit, but the higher you qualify, the easier it is to finish well. We'll see if Jesse Carlson can get another podium here at Bathurst. Bill Baldwin starts third on the grid, and he's still searching for that first victory of the year. In 2020, he is 21 points back off the championship lead, back in third place in the standings. So it's getting into desperation times for Bill if he wants to have a shot at the title. We're getting late in the season, and he's got to start getting some wins here on the calendar. So we'll see if tonight can finally be that first victory of the season. Starting fourth is Pac-Man, who last week returned to his winning ways in Austria. But a pretty lowly qualifying by his standards, down in fourth place in the Toyota FT1. We'll see if he can fight his way back up through the field, get on the podium, and maybe get a second win in a row. JRB will start fifth. JRB, who's missed a couple races this year, but when he's on the track, he always impresses. He's got 2 podiums this year, and every other finish except one has been fourth, so always just out of reach on the podium or on it. So we'll see if he can wiggle his way through the field up onto the podium positions. Percussive starts sixth, another driver with a very strong season, fourth in the points coming into tonight. Quite a ways outside the championship fight, but still fourth in points. Very good season for the man who has yet to score a podium. From 6 on the grid, it'll be tricky, but anything is possible here at Mount Panorama. So we'll see if Percussive and the Toyota FT1 can finally get that first podium in 2020. Ataxia starts 7th, and he's had a rough last couple weeks. Dropped out last week and finished 11th at Northern Isle, so we'll see if he can get back to finishing solid. Yet to get a top 5 this season, but always a very solid performance from the Nissan GTR driver, so we'll see what he has in store tonight in Australia. Chris Ryan will start in 8th, brought home a 5th place after missing 2 weeks last week, and starting a little bit down the order, down in 8th place in the Chevy Corvette. We'll see if he can find his way back up to a position he's familiar with. Rob Oglesby will come to Mount Panorama in his Hyundai Genesis. He's had a decent season himself, a couple top 10s, yet to find the top 5s though. So we'll see if he can drive that Hyundai into the top 5s. Rob Lemon Sr. starting 10th, a struggle of a 2020 GT Cup Series season so far in the Chevy Corvette for Rob Lemon. We'll see if he can finally get a performance worth noting as the season comes to an end. And rounding out the field in 11th in the Ford Mustang is Alex Tesdall, who's had a decent season himself. Nothing to really write home about either. So we'll see if he can finally get that first top 5 of the season as well. That's your starting grid for the 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series Australian Grand Prix from the Mount Panorama circuit in Bathurst. Let's get down to the green flag. At this point, it's a shock if Trent Krentz isn't on pole. 7 pole positions so far this season, and the championship leader will lead the field to green flag under the lights in Mount Panorama. Green flag here in Bathurst. This circuit's so tricky, so gigantic. Every lap is going to be a test of these drivers' focus and concentration and endurance. So many different sections of driving, so many different driving styles will be tested. Obviously, the big, long straightaways through the first and final sector, but you come up through this second sector, and it is twisty, uphill, very tight, not really anywhere to overtake through this part of the track. So this second sector, as they head up the mountain and then back down, it's going to just be about keeping the car off the wall and on the asphalt. Absolutely stunning views down the mountain, you see. And now they start winding back down the hill. Trent Krentz leading the way. Everybody looks like they've basically held position so far. And now here's where it gets fun. Down the big, massive drop. So easy to outbrake yourself and head into one of these walls. I consider this track basically sort of a mix of Monaco and the Nordschleife. Very tight, but very twisty, uphill, downhill. And Monaco, Nordschleife, obviously 2 very demanding circuits. Put them into one, you get this beast of a track. Down the back straightaway now into the final sector. Trent Krentz still leads the way over Jesse Carlson, Bill Baldwin, Pac-Man, JRB, Percussive, Chris Ryan, who has made his way up a position. We'll see who he may have overtaken. Rob Oglesby back to last. He started 9th. Alex Tesdall's made his way up to 9th from last. And I believe Ataxia and Chris Ryan have swapped positions. So that's how things have changed here. The top 8 have broken away from the rest of the field. The rest of the field just coming out of the mountain. So the top 8, on a long enough straight, you can get in one camera shot. There's JRB in 5th, mowing the grass a little bit. And the top 4, nose to tail. Pac-Man at the end of this train. Definitely going to be a race of endurance and patience. Very hard to find a good amount of momentum to go for an overtake on this circuit. Definitely over the next hour, probably most of the overtakes will just be guys passing people who have fallen off the circuit, because this is going to be an exhausting race for a lot of these guys. Up the mountain goes Trent Krentz, who started to gap Jesse Carlson just a little bit. Scrapes that wall on the outside for good measure. But you see that number 15 machine starting to pull away. As if this track wasn't hard enough, the race organizer said, hey, let's hold this race under the lights, and it may be beautiful, but when you miss your turn because you can't see, that wall is not going to be the most gorgeous sight. Down the hill now, and down the long back straightaway. Trent Krentz definitely, you see there, has really gapped Jesse Carlson, who's got half a second penalty. And you can definitely get a penalty for going off track through the second sector, but because there's not much place to go off track, you're going to end up in the wall. So you hit the wall and then get a time penalty, and it just adds insult to injury, and that very well could be what happened to Jesse Carlson, and could definitely be why Trent Krentz has gapped them so much. Jesse might have hit the wall, and now he has this penalty, and he's just holding up these guys behind him. You see Pac-Man basically bump drafting Bill Baldwin into the final corner. And Trent Krentz starts driving off into the distance. These two guys need Jesse to pick up the pace or get out of the way, because these two guys, Bill Baldwin and Pac-Man, are in this championship hunt. But the further away Trent Krentz gets, the further away that championship hope gets. You see just in the background there, that's JRB, who's searching for his 3rd podium on the year. He has missed 3 races through 7 rounds, but in those 7 races, he has 7 top 5. So always a really good performance from this Toyota driver. And right now, early on, staying in this top 5. Percussive just tailing back a little bit in 6th, hitting that inside wall. He's got Chris Ryan just behind him in 7th. The taxi has dropped back a little bit. He's back in 8th. Alex Tesdall still running 9th, but mowing the grass through the final sector. Yet to start his 3rd lap. Behind him is Rob Oglesby, who's battling here with Rob Lohman Sr. Both of them going to mow the grass through the final sector, just where we saw Alex Tesdall doing the same. So 9th, 10th, and 11th all having a very hard time at the start of this Grand Prix. There's Alex Tesdall missing the final corner. Rob Lohman Sr. makes the final corner, and Rob Oglesby still trying to get out of that last chicane. And he's still in 11th. Those guys nearly a lap down already, as here's Trent Krentz into the chicane. And you can just see how big that gap is. Now there's Jesse Carlson. He was in the grass serving his penalty. I think I got a glimpse of that. And Bill Baldwin's going to go by. So Bill Baldwin moves up to 2nd, and now he's going to have to forget about the Corvette behind him and just set his sights on trying to track down the taillights of Trent Krentz. Jesse's not going to let it get away too easy. But Jesse definitely struggling on these last 2 laps. As we switch cameras, it definitely looked like Jesse was in the grass, and he might have been serving a penalty as well. So maybe try to brake hard into the chicane to get rid of his penalty time. And through that, Bill Baldwin took advantage and drove around him. Didn't look too easy, but definitely wasn't hard by the looks of it. And now Pac-Man hopes it's pretty easy to get around Jesse as well. Should he get around him? He can only hope. See there, Rob Oglesby already lapped down Trent Krentz way up the mountain. Actually now on the descent. And he's just minding his own business. Putting down some good laps. One inch wrong through this section of the track can be an absolute calamity for these drivers. Right into the wall. And as I mentioned, if you go off track and hit that wall, you could also get a penalty, or hit the wall the wrong way. You could end up doing a 180 and facing the wrong way. Trent Krentz speeds off into the Australian nighttime with Bill Baldwin. Probably a good almost 10 seconds back at this point. Let's check the timing sheets. 6.5, so definitely overestimated. But Bill really hasn't driven away from Jesse Carlson and company. So Jesse really making Bill have to hold on to that 2nd spot, and Bill's probably just wanting Jesse to go away so that Bill can track down Trent Krentz off in the lead. But Bill's rearview mirror still filled up with those Chevy Corvette headlights. Down this long back, or front straightaway, I should say. Jesse Carlson in that slipstream, but not close enough. And this right-hander up the hill at the end of the straightaway, not really the best spot to go for an overtake. It's really too fast to go for a clean move, and you're probably going to end up pushing the guy into the wall if you go for a move there. And here's Jesse Carlson under attack from Pac-Man. Jesse way up into the wall on the outside, and Pac-Man's just going to sneak on by. And now Jesse goes from 2nd to 4th in the matter of just a few laps. Now he's under attack from 5th place JRB. Through the dust. Corvette drivers struggling early on here at the Australian Grand Prix. Twisting his way down the hill, you see Alex Tesdall there going a lap down now, so only the top 8 on the lead lap. And here is Pac-Man, who's really closed up down the hill on the car in front, Bill Baldwin. These two obviously championship contenders. And after Pac-Man got around Jesse Carlson, Pac-Man definitely really pushed down the hill. And we'll see if he goes for a move here at the chicane. Nearly in the grass. And Pac-Man, just on pure speed alone, is going to clear Bill before the braking zone. And now we'll see if he can try to close up to the car up front. Just in slipstream and momentum, didn't even have to outbrake Bill, just completely cleared him before the turn. Pac-Man makes his way up to second place. That's second, all the way back to fifth in the camera shot there. 4 Toyotas, 1 Corvette. We'll see if Bill lets Pac-Man drive away. Like I mentioned earlier, Bill, when he got around Jesse, didn't really just fly off into the distance. You see Bill there really outbrake himself. I think clipped the outside wall, and that's really going to let Pac-Man pull away in second place. Now we'll see Jesse Carlson close up to Bill. Jesse not really going to be anywhere close enough for a move. But now third through fifth is going to be bunched together with second place pulling off into the distance. That's Pac-Man in second place. It's quite a hefty gap up to Trent Krentz up front. But there's more on the line than just the race win. Very important points up for grabs. Trent Krentz obviously championship leader. 7 points the lead for Trent Krentz coming into tonight's event. And Pac-Man wants to chase down that lead so we can close that gap rather than just have it grow further. But there's Pac-Man off in the grass, hits the wall, and comes to a complete stop. He was pushing too hard, and he's going to drop all the way back to fifth. And now there's Jesse Carlson just ahead of him. He hit the wall, and he's going to drop back to fifth. Pac-Man back to fourth. JRB moves up to a podium position in third, and Bill Baldwin is now going to drive off into the distance. You see Trent Krentz's taillights way up the road there. That was a really good shot to show just what the gap is between first and second place. But a absolutely huge mistake for Pac-Man there as he head down the hill. It's so easy to outbrake yourself, and that's exactly what he did, and hit the wall at the worst spot where there was a little corner of the wall, so it was angled, and it just brought him to a complete halt. And then Jesse Carlson, just as he passed Pac-Man, I don't know if he was distracted and his focus was thrown off or what, but he hit the wall just a couple yards further. I don't think he came to a complete stop as well, but he definitely lost a lot of speed because he went all the way back to fifth. So, percussive, very lonely sixth place, and he's got Chris Ryan not too far behind him in seventh. Ataxia quite a ways back in eighth. Alex Tesdall, a lap down in ninth. And we've had Rob Oglesby and Rob Lemon Sr. already drop out, so just 9 cars on track still. Here's Trent Krentz, your late race winner, mowing the grass and putting down a personal best sector time there. And not just personal best, but race best sector time. We see, I believe this is right around the area. He just passed the area that Pac-Man made his mistake. So Trent Krentz, flawless so far. And we haven't really been focused on him because he's just been kind of cruising around, but from what we've seen, he's really been probably one of just a few drivers who've been completely clean 7 laps in to this event. Still putting down race best times. And that's what we've become accustomed to from Trent Krentz. He gets a big race lead, but he does not let off one bit. He wants that fastest lap time because that's yet another bonus point. And I'm sure right now, if he doesn't have it already, as he crosses the line this time, you'll have the best lap of the race. Nice little skid out of the final corner for good measure. Not the best lap of the race there. That last corner definitely messed him up, but I'm sure he already has the best lap. Yes, by a whole second. So that's another bonus point. So that makes the gap 8 points from himself, Trent Krentz, back to Pac-Man in second place in the points, running 4th on track. We'll check back in on this battle. Bill Baldwin, just up the road in front of JRB for 2nd. JRB running 3rd. And Pac-Man just a little further back in 4th. They were bunched together a couple minutes ago, now spreading out a little bit. This is battle between 2nd all the way back to 5th. So we'll see how that shakes up over the next, now just less than 45 minutes. 15 minutes into this race already. 8 laps in. And we've had quite an adventurous race so far through the top 5. Trent Krentz has pulled away, but 2nd back to through 5th. Just about everybody's swapped positions at some point. And I'm sure we have not seen the end of that. Bill Baldwin down the hill, trying to chase down leader Trent Krentz. Let's check the gap. Through all the hullabaloo, they've lost another 6 seconds, so it's now up to 12 seconds between Trent Krentz and Bill Baldwin. If you remember, earlier on, it was just about 6.5, but Bill Baldwin obviously made a mistake. Pac-Man got around him up to 3rd, and then started to pull away from that gap, but then Pac-Man, we saw, drove into the barrier, and now Bill Baldwin's been promoted back up to 2nd. But through all the battling, all the mistakes, another 6 seconds has been lost, as Trent Krentz just going for a midnight drive here in Australia. This was not a very good lap from Trent Krentz, 8.5 seconds slower than his last lap. Let's check the timesheets now. Now that lead has been cut in half. And that tells me he must have had a really bad run through the chicane, because I believe that was the only thing between him and the end of the lap when I was just rambling on a second ago. So Trent Krentz obviously struggled a little bit through the chicane and lost 6 seconds. So very interesting. That's what I mean. One mistake at this circuit can cost you so much time. Should Trent Krentz copy that mistake, Bill Baldwin's going to be right on his back bumper. And of course, Bill has to keep it clean from here. He made a little mistake earlier, ran wide, and that's when Pac-Man took 2nd place. It wasn't too big of a mistake, but definitely without it, he would have probably stayed in 2nd place. And the gap could be just a few seconds. Down the hill, Trent Krentz. Let's watch his run down this back straightaway this time around. Right up on that wall. Big wiggle out of the Toyota Supra as he came around that final corner at the bottom of the hill. Down the back straightaway, let's see him make his way through the chicane this time around. And we'll see if we can maybe see any tire tracks off circuit. Nice and clean through this time. Don't see any tire tracks. But definitely last lap was not a very pleasant one for Trent Krentz. He is pushing the limits of this Mount Panorama circuit. You see him hitting the wall through the hill and kissing the grass a little bit on entry and exit of some of these other corners. He's really pushing it. And he's right on the edge of race winner and in the barrier. 7.1 seconds. The gap has grown between Trent Krentz, who just put down the best first sector of anybody. We will see how things progress. I'm not too sure when the pit cycle will be. I'm never really in the loop about that. But I'm sure it will be very interesting. There you see Trent Krentz all over the road at the top of the hill. Trent Krentz had a big issue coming up the hill there. And that definitely cost him a lot of time. And I was just talking about pit stops, and Chris Ryan is in from 7th place for his first stop of the day. And Trent Krentz obviously having some struggles. Maybe could be due to worn tires. I'm surprised that only cost him 2 seconds, but had a big moment, ran wide, had a big tank slapper, and then hit the wall. So Trent Krentz struggled at the top of the hill there, but obviously, looking at the gap, it hasn't really bothered him too much. 6.9 seconds still. We'll see who else might come in this lap. That was 3.7 seconds off his time. So definitely a struggle of a lap. Tires probably getting worn. So we'll see if your race leader, Trent Krentz, will come into pit this time around. And looks like he will. So your race leader in the number 15 Toyota Supra, Trent Krentz, will come in for his first stop of the day. Struggles a little bit getting into the pit lane. I saw some gravel get kicked up, but doesn't look like it'll bother him too much. There's Bill Baldwin, second place in. JRB, third place will come in. Pac-Man, fourth place, misses the pit entry as well. He hits the gravel trap. Jesse Carlson, so your entire top 5 comes in. Jesse looked like he had the cleanest pit entry of anybody. We'll see 6th place Percussive. He's coming through the chicane now. We'll see if he comes in this time around. Trent Krentz is back out on the track. And here comes Bill Baldwin. He leaves the pit lane with JRB just behind him. Jesse Carlson and Pac-Man yet to leave. There goes Pac-Man now. Percussive, who is in 6th place, comes in. And Jesse Carlson still yet to leave. Now he comes out. But look at this battle between 2nd and 3rd. Bill Baldwin, JRB. Nose to tail as they leave the pit lane. The last thing Bill Baldwin wants is to have to battle somebody who's not the race leader, Trent Krentz. He wants to just be left alone until he can catch up to that number 15. But all night he's had somebody right in his rearview mirror. Absolutely flying around the hill. The top of the section of this circuit, at the very top of the hill, if you really want to go for it, it's very easy to not really have to brake all that much when you get to the top of the hill and just fly through it, and I'm sure that's what we're seeing these guys do on these fresh tires. We saw Bill Baldwin just soar around that section of the track. And that, we haven't really seen anybody make any mistake through there, but if there's somewhere that you don't want to make a mistake, it's there. Because that's, aside from the straightaways, probably one of the fastest parts of the circuit. So really anywhere, every turn, every section of this track is out to get you. And we've seen many drivers experience that tonight before the halfway point. Race leader Trent Krentz, we've seen him make a couple mistakes as he's been really pushing that Toyota Supra around this circuit. Bill Baldwin, we've seen him run wide and kiss the wall a little bit. JRB, I don't think we've seen much, but oh, right there, big lockup. Pac-Man, we obviously saw go straight into the barrier early on. Jesse Carlson, we saw him hit the wall, and in general, has just been a little bit off the pace, especially compared to his qualifying pace. Obviously, he qualified 2nd, but now running 5th. And quite a ways off the guys in front, 2nd through 4th. That is Jesse Carlson, Northern Iowa winner. Not having as good of a race as he probably thought he might coming out of qualifying. There's Percussive running off the circuit a little bit. He's in 6th. Chris Ryan, quite a way back off him, in 7th. And Ataxia runs a very lonely 8th, the last car on the lead lap. Alex Tasdal just soldiering his way through this event, running 9th. I believe 2 laps down now. And we've had Rob Oglesby and Rob Lohman both drop out early. I've driven this circuit a number of times, and I gotta tell you, when you reach the bottom of the hill and coming out of that final left-hander, it is just like a sigh of relief every lap, because you got the hard part of the track out of the way. Now you just got to deal with this very fast chicane, and then you've completed another lap. And I'm sure when the final lap of this event comes, whoever it may be in the lead will definitely be very happy to finally come out of that hill one final time. 25 minutes into the event now, 35 to go. Trent Krentz has led every millisecond of this event. And generally when that happens, it stays the same throughout the entire hour that we race. Trent Krentz has dominated a number of races, I believe 5 wins to this point, and all 5 were consecutive. Had 5 wins in a row: Japan, Italy, Dragon Trail, Brands Hatch, and Nürburgring. 5 victories in a row for Trent Krentz. Struggled at Northern Isle 2 weeks ago. Last week in Austria, it was a very, very exciting race and came within just a couple seconds of beating Pac-Man, but made a late race mistake and had to settle for second. But still your championship leader. Trent Krentz looking to win his 6th race of the season. And I believe last year he had 8 victories. So on track for probably around the same. And I believe a shorter schedule, which is very impressive. You see him there. That is a fantastic camera shot out of that left-hander. You see the cars just fly by through that very fast section right there, run out of that left-hander right up against the wall. That is a great camera shot. And then down the hill. Just hope the car stays on the ground as it goes over that big drop. Here's JRB and Pac-Man battling their way 3rd and 4th as they head down the mountain. And there's just so many corners on this circuit that you could lose so much time in one. But if you're battling somebody, then they could lose the same amount of time a couple corners later, and then you've closed right back up. Down this back straightaway, we saw Pac-Man earlier just drive by Bill Baldwin just on pure speed out of the slipstream, and you see it right there again. Pac-Man drives right by JRB because of the slipstream he has down the back straightaway. And he's going to take 3rd place. We'll see him now try to close up to Bill Baldwin in front. Bill, obviously 3rd in the championship standings. Pac-Man runs 2nd. And if they're not going to catch Trenton, then they need at least damage limitation. As we're coming up close to halfway through, and Trent Krentz, he's put a foot wrong. We saw him hit the wall a couple times earlier, but hasn't been anywhere close to some of the mistakes that we've seen other guys make. And he definitely has the pace to make up for any mistakes that he does make. As I don't think we've seen the gap less than 6 seconds. Right now, 14.3 seconds from Trent Krentz back to Bill Baldwin. Just another few seconds back to Pac-Man and JRB. Twisting their way back up the hill for the 14th time tonight. 28 minutes into the race. Been a very eventful race for Pac-Man, who started a little bit down the order. I believe he started 4th. Made his way up to 2nd and started to pull away, but then made a huge mistake coming up right in this section he's coming up to. Overdrove the corner, hit the wall, came to a complete halt. And dropped back to 5th for a second, but then Jesse Carlson, who now runs 5th, made a mistake just a couple feet further. I believe it was right there that he ran wide and hit the wall. I might be wrong, though. There's a lot of corners. But now Pac-Man, who was running 4th for quite some time, finally made his way around JRB, this time last lap. Now he's really put his head down. Has pulled away from JRB. And is now, I believe, closing up to Bill Baldwin. So Pac-Man very easily might be the 2nd fastest car on track. Look at the lap times, 2:01.3 for Trent Krentz. That's a whole 1.45 seconds faster between Trent Krentz's fastest lap and Pac-Man's 2nd fastest lap. Like I said, damage limitation, week in, week out. Trent Krentz probably going to be the fastest guy on track. It's just hope he puts a foot wrong, and if he doesn't, finish as well as you can. So with the bonus point for pole position, it was 7 points at the drop of the green flag. And then another point, likely for fastest lap for Trent Krentz. That makes it 8. You get 25 points for winning, 22 for second, and 20 for third. So as they run, it is 13 points between Trent Krentz and Pac-Man. That is first and second in the championship. And I believe 25 between Trent Krentz and Bill Baldwin, who runs third. Realistically, the only 3 guys within a shot of the title. Separated by 25 points, which is an entire race win. And granted, we only generally have about 10 to 12 guys run every week. That's more like 2 race wins. Tonight we had 11 guys start the event. 11th place gets 11 points, so that's just a 14 point difference between first and quote-unquote last. So Bill Baldwin definitely, as the calendar comes to an end, is going to have to start getting that one extra step in his performance. Because this man right here is just week in, week out at the top of his game. You see him right there pushing the car so hard, right on that edge of out of control. That's what these guys love. Being right on the edge of out of control. Just pushing the car to its limit, sometimes just beyond the limits. And we've seen it anytime we switch the camera to your race leader, Trent Krentz. He is all over the track, just getting every inch, every millimeter out of this circuit and out of that car. Right there, you see him kiss the wall. And this is probably my favorite section of the track. Just fly through. I was talking about it earlier when they all left the pits. The smart way might include lifting off there through the left-handers, but if you really want every millisecond out of your lap, keep your foot in it. And this part of the track reminds me of Monaco that they run in Formula 1. Get as close to those inside walls as possible. Here's Bill Baldwin making his way through that same section of the track. Probably about 15, 16 seconds behind. He's got Pac-Man probably 2 or 3 seconds behind him, 2.5. Between second and third place. Swap the positions, second and third place in the championship. Pac-Man looked like he closed up a bit just a couple laps ago, immediately after he got around JRB. But I don't think he's closing up too much now on Bill. So he's really got to put his head down if he wants that second place, at least second place. Now it'll be interesting to see because it wasn't quite halfway when these guys came into pit. So it's more than likely going to be a 2-stop race. But we might see some guys try to stretch it out. I'm sure there's going to be some guys who might try to stretch out the strategy and maybe go for just a one-stop pit strategy. One guy who we've become very used to pulling off some very interesting strategy gambles is Jesse Carlson. Basically won Northern Isle on a different strategy. Long pit. Filled up the car more than everybody else with gas in the first stop of that event, which had more pit stops than I could count. And then raced his way back up to the front with the time he lost in the pit lane. So when the final stop came around, he didn't have to pit for anywhere near as long as his competitors, and he just came out way ahead of everybody else and won that race. So He also made a 3-stop race, a 1-stop race. We've seen Jesse Carlson in the 48 Lowe's Corvette pull off some very exciting strategy gambles. So we'll see if he has any of that in store tonight at Mount Panorama. He runs 5th. We probably wouldn't give him the race win, but definitely could at least close him back up to these guys up ahead. Bill Baldwin, Pac-Man, and JRB. 2nd, 3rd, and 4th are just a little bit up the road. So if Jesse does pull off one of his strategy gambles, he could be right back in that battle that he was the lead engine of early on. Check the gap again. 2 seconds now. Pac-Man to Bill Baldwin. So it closed about half a second over that last lap or so. So he is gaining, just not a huge amount. And that definitely could be tied into maybe Bill just messed up a corner or two. And it might just be a matter of time before Pac-Man messes up a corner of his own and loses half a second. So what I mentioned earlier, with all these twists and turns on the circuit, the guys you're around might make a mistake, and then you start pulling away, and then you make a mistake of your own, and they're right back on you. No gap, no battle is for certain in this event. We've seen Trent Krentz right on the ragged edge all night. 1 foot wrong, he could hit the tire barrier, and we'll have a race on our hands. Just past 36 minutes in, we've only got about 23 and a half minutes left in tonight's race. Second pit stop probably coming up within the next 5-6 minutes or so. That's about 2 or 3 laps. So I'm very excited to see what happens between these three, Bill Baldwin, Pac-Man, and JRB, because they are by far the closest battle on the track. We haven't seen much on the track action in a while, but we came into tonight's event knowing there wasn't going to be much on track action. When everybody was bunched up, obviously we'd see some aggressive moves, but obviously we knew it's a tight track. It's more of an endurance track, more of just be patient, let everybody else fall off around you and take advantage. It's not a track that encourages, you know, battling side by side for an entire lap. And we're going to get more of the same next week when we head back to Germany for the second time this year. And the GT Cup Series guys, they take on the Nordschleife at the Nürburgring, the full circuit of 100 some odd turns. And that's going to be quite an event. And I'm sure that could definitely throw a wrench into this championship battle, because that track, these guys think this is tricky. That track's even harder. Track memorization. If you have the Nordschleife memorized 100%, then you're basically a superhero, because there's just so many little crevices in Germany that it'll be impressive to see how many guys can run a fully clean race. Because even tonight, I don't think anybody's been 100% clean. And if they have been, it's because they've been so cautious that they're off the pace. As we're seeing now, Jesse Carlson, who, besides one little mistake, has been pretty clean for the most part from what we've seen, but obviously off the pace compared to the guys around him. And being conservative in this series, it does not really pay off. So we'll see what the different strategies can be at the Nordschleife, because I'm almost certain nobody's gonna kamikaze in, go for the race lead on the first lap. So we will see that next week when the NOSSCAR GT Cup Series takes on the Nordschleife in Germany. We'll run through the field again as we're coming up probably to the second stop pretty soon, probably in the next lap or two. Trent Krentz has led every lap of this race, sorry. Has the fastest lap, started on pole. Just Trent Krentz things, reigning series champion, current championship leader, looking for his 6th victory on the year. Bill Baldwin runs second with Pac-Man just behind him. Very big championship implications between these two. Second and third in the championship have swapped positions in this race. That's Bill Baldwin and Pac-Man, nose to tail. JRB just off in the distance in 4th, who definitely can get involved in this final tire stint. He runs 4th, which is, he's basically trademarked that position at this point in the season. I believe this will be his 4th or 5th 4th place finish. Oh, and just as I say that, all over the road as he heads up the hill. Got too much curb on the exit there. He ran a little wide, hit the curb, bottomed out, and a huge stink slapper there for JRB. He'll hold 4th place. That's definitely going to be a push in encouragement and aggression for Jesse Carlson. Now he can see the taillights of that Toyota FT1. And now he's got something to chase down. That's Jesse Carlson running 5th in the Corvette. Percussive runs 6th. He's been there, I believe, all night in his Toyota. I believe this will just be his 2nd or 3rd non-top 5 finish. Still a solid position, but obviously might have expected a little more for Percussive. Here's Chris Ryan, who runs 7th, who's making his 2nd stop. On the first pit stop, he came in a lap before everybody else, so if that trend continues, we'll see basically everybody else come in this lap. So Chris Ryan, he runs 7th in his Corvette. Pretty off-the-pace night for him, but night's not over. I'm sure he has something in store for us. Here's a Taxi running 8th in the Nissan GTR. Very quiet night from him, but he started a little down the order and has gotten back up to 8th. He's had a struggle the last couple weeks, so I'm sure this is a nice return to form for the Nissan GTR driver. Alex Tesdall runs 9th. Couple laps down, just trying to make his way to the end of this event. And we had Rob Oglesby and Rob Lohman Sr. all drop out so far. Here is Trent Krentz. He just made his 2nd stop, and he is go to the end of tonight's race. He's left the pit lane. He's going to head up the hill now. Here is Bill Baldwin, who's filling up with fuel. And the rest of the top 5 have all come in. Percussive, I'm sure when he gets to the end of the lap, he'll come in. And Pac-Man has jumped Bill Baldwin for 2nd place. That is not the first time we've seen Bill Baldwin lose positions in pit lane this season. And Pac-Man, huge pit stop there. Was just on the bumper of Bill Baldwin. Now is off in the distance. That is 2nd place in the championship, now taking 2nd place in the race. But Bill will not let it get away that easy. He's going to stay right in Pac-Man's tire tracks and be there should Pac-Man make another mistake. With now just 17 minutes to go, this could be very, very interesting for these final podium spots. JRB, quite a ways off, obviously had that big moment before they all came in. But even then, I think he lost a little bit of time in the pit lane. Jesse Carlson, I think, has dropped off of JRB a little bit. He runs in 5th. Percussive runs 6th. He just left his 2nd pit stop. Chris Ryan, who we saw already make his 2nd stop, holds his 7th place, and Taxi runs 8th. Back up front, Trent Krentz flying down the back straightaway. And coming up to start his 22nd lap of tonight's race. Almost 44 minutes in. We'll have just 16 minutes left in this hour-long event. You see him this was a really good lap, as a matter of fact. I honestly believe that was his fastest lap of the race, I think. 2:01.395, so no. But I think that outlaps are faster than a normal lap, because the pit lane cuts the first corner. Because that definitely looked like a 2-minute flat from Trent Krentz. So very interesting there to see how the lap times differentiate on, normal laps and out laps. Regardless, forget my blabbering on about nothing. Here is Pac-Man running 2nd. Bill Baldwin 3rd. Closest battle on track between the two Toyota FT1s that have not let each other go all season. And as these two have tussled all year, Trent Krentz is just drawn off in the distance, and that is exactly what's happened tonight. These two have gone at it, and Trent Krentz just escapes with another victory. And this is race 11 of 16. So just 5 races after this, these two might have to come to some sort of truce. Maybe work together to make sure Trent Krentz stops winning. We can only hope for the sake of an exciting championship battle, because as it stands, Trent Krentz, over the last 2 weeks, the gap is closed, but I'm sure he gets this momentum and he's not going to let it go. And I'm sure this championship gap will start opening back up should these two keep going at it. Less than 15 minutes to go now, closer to 14 minutes as a matter of fact, left here in Bathurst at the Mount Panorama Racing Circuit. It's been a very, very exciting race here for this 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series Australian Grand Prix. Trent Krentz obviously has led the way all night, but Pac-Man, Bill Baldwin, JRB, Jesse Carlson, second all the way back to 5th, have had quite an adventurous night. Here's Jesse Carlson going off on his own adventure again, mowing the grass a little bit in the Chevy Corvette. He started second, but just didn't really have the pace at the beginning of the race and held up a little bit of a train behind him. Trent Krentz drove off in the distance, and then Bill Baldwin, who started third, got around Jesse, and then Pac-Man made his way through. He got up to third himself as Bill ran second. Then Pac-Man made his way up to second, started to chase down Trent Krentz, but hit the tire barrier, dropped all the way back to 5th as Bill Baldwin made his way up to second. JRB ran in the podium spots for a little while. He was up to third. Jesse Carlson, for just a second, made it back up to third place, hit the wall, and he fell back to 5th, which is where he's been ever since. And Pac-Man, he didn't lose too much time, which is a blessing on his part, because he came to a complete stop. And he was very lucky not to lose a ton more time, but instead stayed right in that battle and has fought his way all the way back up to second, past JRB on track, down the back straightaway, and then just passed a couple minutes ago Bill Baldwin in the pit lane. And definitely not the first time this season we've seen Pac-Man jump somebody in the pits, and that we've seen Bill Baldwin lose time in the pits. I'm not sure if that's maybe more aggressive strategies from Pac-Man to maybe short pit more often, or if Bill Baldwin just, his tire changing and refueling crew, if they're just not on it. But very well, Bill Baldwin's pit crew, his team, might be a huge factor in where he stands in this championship so far. Just out of reach. He's going to need a really good finish to the season. Yet last year's runner-up, the NOSSCAR Super GT champion, yet to win an event here in 2020. He's come so close. He's been on the podium every race. But with Pac-Man having 4 wins and Trent Krentz having within 12 minutes of 6 victories now, just getting podiums every week, that's not gonna do it. There's JRB coming out of the first corner. He's hitting the wall. And he's going to try to keep Jesse Carlson behind him. But Bill Baldwin, Mr. Consistency, but sometimes consistency isn't all you need. He needs to win a race or two by the end of the year if he wants any sort of shot. Willow Springs, he didn't win Willow Springs, the season opener, but he started on pole and had an incredible drive through the field after wrecking out early and ended up finishing third. It was definitely, obviously he didn't win, obviously he wrecked, but the drive through the field definitely had to be a huge boost in confidence for Bill. And it looked like he was sure to win a couple races this season with that type of speed, but that's about it. He hasn't had another pole position. He hasn't had another fastest lap. And he's just been, or no, I take that back. He had fastest lap at Dragon Trail, but that was it. He just hasn't had the pace compared to Trent Krentz. Most weeks he's right there with Pac-Man. But Pac-Man obviously won 3 in a row, and then last week won his 4th victory of the year. So Pac-Man at least has stepped it up a little bit, but Bill Baldwin has just consistently just been good, not great. And with just 5 rounds left after this one, we need to see that greatness that we know he has in him. Regardless, I know it's going to be an exciting championship fight to the very end. Anything can happen over 5 rounds. We saw over 5 rounds Trent Krentz win all 5. So maybe Bill Baldwin could go off and win all 5 races for the rest of the year, and I'll just have to look back and say, wow, there's that greatness. We could see Pac-Man just absolutely fall off. You never know. Jesse Carlson, JRB, they might step it up and win a couple races over the rest of the year. You never know in this series. On paper, you look at the results and you could say, wow, Trent Krentz has dominated, Pac-Man's been there, Bill Baldwin's been there, and say it's a pretty predictable series. It is not. If you watch the races, you know anything can and has happened this year. We've seen the race leaders wreck out. We've seen amazing drives to the field. We've seen underdog winners. It's been a crazy year in the 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series season so far. And as we near season's end, it's only going to get more exciting. Next week is Nordschleife, and then we're going to head to Japan the week after for the Kyoto Driving Park. Then head to Spain at the circuit Barcelona, Catalunya, Alsace Village in France, and then we'll finish the season at the absolutely amazing Autodromo de Interlagos in Brazil, which honestly, if you ask me, is one of the greatest circuits in the world. And it's an absolute shame that I believe it's the FIA wants to basically just forget about the track and build a new track in Brazil and tear down a forest. I know there's a lot of petitions going around to, you know, say don't do that. But definitely will be a very fitting, very exciting season end at the Interlagos circuit in Brazil. Right now, just 7 minutes away from another victory, 6th on the year for Trent Krentz. And yet another fastest lap to boot and stretch out his championship lead. With Pac-Man moving up to 3rd, it'll be an 11-point gap as it stands. Trent Krentz, it was 5 points coming in, get the 2 for bonus, the 2 bonus points for pole and fastest lap. That adds it up to 6, so it'll be a 9-point gap because it's a 3-point difference from 1st to 2nd. Is my math off? It might be. It was a 6-point gap coming in. I stand corrected. Say it every week. Don't listen to my math. 6 points coming into tonight's event. Trent Krentz led Pac-Man. 231 points over 225. Trent Krentz almost definitely going to get fastest lap. Already got pole. That'll make it an 8-point gap. Then 3 points makes it 11. So that'll be the gap between 1st and 2nd going in to the Nordschleife next week, which is going to be an absolutely crazy race, I'm sure. And I think that'll really be the make or break race for Pac-Man and Bill Baldwin. That's gonna be a race that's almost gonna guaranteed have a mistake from everybody, similar to what we saw tonight. And we'll see, should that be the case, if Trent Krentz makes a mistake, we'll see if Pac-Man and Bill Baldwin can, you know, avoid making mistakes on their own and maybe close the championship gap back up. But I know that these guys are all going to put in so much practice for the Germany race next week. So we will have to see what happens next week. Tonight, we're just a little over 5 minutes away from seeing the checkered flag for your race leader, Trent Krentz. He's got a pretty safe gap of 23 seconds back to Pac-Man, who's got 2.7 behind him to Bill Baldwin. So Pac-Man, unless he makes a mistake, I'm sure probably has the second place locked down. And it'll be, I believe, about 2 laps left. This lap and then 2 more for Trent Krentz. Because it's about a 2-minute lap. He's already a minute into this one. And he's in the grass there on the left side. Maybe falling asleep here in the late night in Australia. Into the chicane for one of the final times. I stand by that he made a mistake there earlier, but that was about it. We missed whatever happened, but there was a lap. He lost 6 seconds. And that was really the only time we saw any sort of danger for this man. Just crosses the line after 56 minutes ticks by, so yes, about 2 minutes, or 2 laps left. So this will be Trent Krentz's penultimate lap. Pac-Man and Bill Baldwin will have to do 2 more as well. JRB, I'm sure, will have 2. Jesse Carlson will be close. He might only have 1 lap left. We'll see when he crosses the line. Or no, sorry, I take that back. Again, math, awful. Percussive, I'm sure, only has 1 after this. So 6 on back. Probably only 1 lap more. Obviously, in this series, you finish the lap you're on when the timer hits 1 hour. There's Trent Krentz into the outside wall. Lucky that the physics of this game held up. Sometimes you hit that wall and it just loops you around for some reason. We saw earlier his tires, when they get worn, he is a little more all over the road than he usually is. And coming towards the end of their life now. And we know that he pushes that car every lap, which just wears them more. Look at that time. Lost 5 seconds this time around. Through the first about half of this lap. Trent Krentz, the race leader, has lost 5 seconds. And there's still another lap left. He's really struggling as he heads down the hill. Look at that line there. Pac-Man just now hit the big drop, so the gap's still really, really large. It was obviously, what, 23 seconds when we last checked. But at this rate, Trent Krentz really has to focus back up. 7 seconds slower than his usual time. Makes it through the chicane nice and tidy, and will come to start his final lap of the race when he gets to the corner this time around. Gap as he crosses the line, 17.6 seconds. So he'd have to do what he did last lap, whatever he did wrong, and do it 2 times as bad if Pac-Man wants a chance. A little messy out of turn 1, but we've seen basically everybody be messy out of turn 1 tonight. Really trying to use up every inch of the track. And Trent Krentz will head up the hill for one final time. Pac-Man runs second unless he makes a big mistake through the second section of the track. I'm sure he's going to hold on to that second place. Bill Baldwin will have to settle for yet another 3rd place. JRB runs 4th. Jesse Carlson a little bit behind him, but just out of being close enough to apply pressure. That's Jesse Carlson 5th. Percussive running in 6th. This might be his final lap. I think he might be the first guy to cross the line and officially end the race. Chris Ryan runs 7th. Taxia runs 8th, and Alex Tesdall runs 9th. Most guys basically finished where they started. Didn't see a lot of action, just came here to Bathurst and got their points. Are going to head home. And here's Trent Krentz Coming to the bottom of the hill for the final time. Sigh of relief as he leaves the trickiest part of the track for the last time. Down the massive back straightaway. Weaving down the back straightaway. Get a celebration in. Trenton Krentz into the chicane. If he can navigate this, he has basically locked himself in as the race winner. And there he goes. One more turn, the 90-degree left-hander, and then he will cross the line. The number 15 Corona Toyota Supra through the final corner is going to go to victory lane for the 6th time this season and further stretch out the championship lead. Trenton Krentz will win the 2020 Australian Grand Prix. Pac-Man and Bill Baldwin have just left the chicane. Pac-Man's got one more turn to navigate. Gets through it cleanly, and he will take home probably a very frustrating 2nd place. Bill Baldwin, an even more frustrating 3rd. JRB will come through the final corner. Nice and steady. He will take home 4th. Jesse Carlson started 2nd, but just wasn't on the pace of the guys around him. He will take home 5th, and the Chevy Corvette Percussive already crossed the line in 6th. Chris Ryan crossed the line 7th. Ataxia crossed the line in 8th. Alex Tesdall 9th. Rob Oglesby will take home 10th. He dropped out. Same with Rob Lohman Sr., who will finish 11th. That was the 2020 NOSSCAR GT Cup Series Australian Grand Prix, and we hope you join us next week for what will be a very exciting race at the Nürburgring Nordschleife.